Today's discussion is a little bit touchy because clearly there's certain things that you can and can't say. I'm going to bust this wide open and just give my honest opinion. So hopefully you guys don't hate me and unsubscribe, which if you do, I get it. That's fine. But we're going to talk about State Farm and this article from the Barrett Express News. And its title is Where State Farm Sees a Lot of Fraud, Black Customers See Discrimination. This is kind of an argument I've had with my wife a few times because I got fairly darker skin. I don't know if you can kind of tell. The video editing doesn't always show it the best, and it just looks like I have a tan all the time. And she's seen times where I've been discriminated against, and I don't feel like I ever have been. So it's kind of like one of those scenarios where it's like I don't see it, but she does, and maybe it has been and maybe it's not. But I can relate to this into a little bit of pieces. And I'm going to break down the story, and we're going to explain these lawsuits that State Farm is having, where the lawyers are saying that it's discrimination against black people. It's essentially the State Farm process is denying ethnic areas for fraud. And it's a common thing that they're having, supposedly. This is all according to the article. I'll link it below so you can read it. There's a claims department with State Farm that is purposefully referring additional fraud claims to an intensive fraud unit. And they've got terms and they've got things that they say, fill the cup is what they're talking about, which means throw some more fraud claims in the mix because if it's in this area, it's gotta likely be a fraud claim. Now, I'm going to defend State Farm a little bit right now because I've been in the industry. I can give you the background of what I've seen in the past, and there's a good and a bad. So I think what State Farm is actually messing up with is more of the fact that they're being negligent. But what I mean by negligent is that they're not aware of what's happening. So what I've seen in the past with other larger companies I've worked for is a lot of the rules come from the top on down in these major insurance companies. And the feedback usually only gets to a supervisor. It's at that supervisor level that usually doesn't push it up because it's a common thing to know that these major companies only want to get the feedback down. They don't want to get the feedback up. Do they have meetings around other things and concerns? Yes. They have the supervisors do the meetings. And I'm not saying this is the way State Farm is. This was my experience in a similar call center / huge insurance industry, right? They have those meetings, but they're very rarely listened to. We used to be the top salespeople in our industry, and we would make jokes that what's the point of having our morning meeting on a vacation that we won? Because it's just written down and then forgot about, or it says to be determined for the next 12 months. And then the next year says the exact same problems that we're having, the same concerns, and they might fix 1 out of 20 things that we've asked them to do. That's what I think. And I'm just envisioning as I read this article where it starts off talking about a Mr. Williams who actually had to sell his apartment complex. He had 6 apartments and there was a claim, and the claim got triggered for fraud, and it wasn't in his case. At least that's the claim that they're saying in this lawsuit. Because of that, all of the delays and all of the back pay and only getting paid partially for the claim, it ended up causing him to basically sell the apartment complex. He had to just shut the whole thing down. It just wasn't affordable. Now he's going back saying that it was unjust, which that's a different story. Like, you can say that, but he's saying it's unjust because of the color of his skin. That leads into the next part where there's another person, an employee, an ex-employee of State Farm, Miss Campbell Jacksons, is also suing for discrimination because she was part of, not necessarily his, but she was part of that department that she feels she was put in there and given more of the ethnic speaking people. So basically black people would talk to her because she was black, and they would just feed her that type of person, and they were trying to train her to get more of in that denial. Essentially what it is the thought was, it's a good thought, so it's, if possible, flags of fraud. So like you're in a high risk area, your birthday's coming up, and you pretended to have registration, you bounced 3 checks, like it's kind of a possible fraud situation, right? So that's going to trigger, now you got a claim and you're trying to back pay it just to catch up, and that's going to throw up a red flag. that would go into her department to where she would investigate it further, and vice versa. In this case, we're talking about homes, and his was an apartment complex, and that was just flagged. It was just because he was in that high-risk area, it instantly flagged that. Whether or not you can do that, I don't know. That's part that I'm not aware of, that if you're just in a zip code that has high fraud, that it's instantly fraud. I think an investigation could or should be done, but not necessarily to that extent. I think it should be based off of the type of claim, the red flags that show up, and I think there should be a few cases, and they didn't go into detail what flagged it, but a few things that they should determine that situation. Going back to the part that I said, I think that what's happening is it's just getting stopped at a certain level to where what we call higher ups, the people that are managing the company, aren't necessarily getting the feedback. But if they are, it's always touted in a better way, because who wants to be the supervisor that says, hey, we've got possible discrimination over here, we need to just get our hands on it? They're more likely to be like, oh, hey, so-and-so did mention this. That might be something we can look at in the future. Right? They're not taking it as serious as they could. Not to say that that's, I'll cover my butt, right? I can't say too much just because I don't want to go, don't involve me in the lawsuit. In that scenario, knowing what I know of that type of center and that type of function, I don't necessarily see 100% where the discrimination is. I do and I don't, because here's what I've experienced. In the urban settings, people tend to group with like the people, right? And when I talk to friends and family, and this is where my wife's going to yell at me, you put this on the internet? Well, the way I personally see it is I don't see the color. I don't see the skin color. I see, because I talk on the phone to customers, right? I hear the voice. And whether you're white, black, Asian, whatever the case is, I don't see that, right? And I don't envision that. But if you're the type of person that calls me up and says, yeah, I want the cheapest deal, blah, 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 yeah, hold on. And then you put me on hold 5 times, and then you're just mumbling to someone else. Like, that's a person I don't want to work with, right? But if I sell you a policy, I need to give you my best, just as I would as the guy that I love to sell. If I didn't sell you a policy, that's a different story. But if I took your business into my company, State Farm did, then I need to treat you just as good as I did the person before. And there should be no discrimination there, which is where I do see in the article that they're talking about the discrimination is happening. And they also kind of do it with, according to this, they've got a Muslim group mixed into there too, to where it is being treated differently because of the area, not necessarily the person. Similar to what I just said I do, right? I listen to the voice, the tone, the type of person. If they don't care, they don't get it, want it, or need it, they don't care what I have to say, they don't want the coverages that are good for them, they just want the cheapest piece of paper and go out the door, that's not the type of client I'm looking for. In this scenario, I wouldn't recommend taking their business. I would refer them, I could quote them and try to sell it, but we're usually going to clash, right? We're not going to be a good fit in that scenario. Same thing here, but they wrote the business, right? They took the client in. Now it's their job to show them how good of a company they can be for them. And they're doing the opposite according to this. Now, going back to Miss Campbell/Johnson, she is claiming that the discrimination is for her as well, because she got let go. She brought up the concerns and said, I don't feel like a lot of these are fraud, and you're having me investigate things that shouldn't be flagged up to my department. And the commonality is that they're ethnic and they're in areas that are, yes, there is a lot more claims, but the case being, why am I talking to them all the time? And why am I getting these flags that technically aren't really real fraud claims? It's just you knew it was, now you're forwarding it on. And they're kind of saying that they promoted the employees to push those upwards. They're filling the cup, right? That cup is her department. They're just throwing more people in there. Now, the claim hasn't been settled according to this. She was offered $175,000, which was more so her back pay for the time that she's been gone. This has been going on since 2016, and it's just now hitting light to where it's becoming a major public thing. Let me know what your guys' thoughts are. I want to just be very careful on the way that we talk about this because we don't know all of the stories. I don't know Miss Campbell/Johnson's scenario. And according to this article, I'm kind of on her side more than I am on State Farm's, just because I know the style and the environment that that typical large company has, but I also know that they don't usually purposefully discriminate, at least not the ones I've been through. But it doesn't necessarily mean that they're not at fault in some scenarios. And if it is discrimination, they just need to take ownership, get it fixed, taken care of, and move forward with this. They are very good at denying claims when they're at those gray areas. There's a lot of gray areas in insurance, and that's something we'll talk about further in this video series that we talk about different companies. Let me know what your guys' thoughts are. Leave it in the comments below. Do you think that State Farm is being discriminatory, I think. Maybe I need some lessons. Or do you think that this is the scenario that I'm thinking, where they might be a little bit, maybe one or two people are, which needs to be fixed, but also I think it's more of a processes and an implementation of just a failed system that they've created. Whether it's small or big, it's still hurting the customer that they shouldn't have taken if they didn't think that they could service them. And if they're denying claims that shouldn't be denied, then there should be some recourse or reaction that the other people have opportunity to go after. Let me know what your guys' thoughts are. I'm Mark with Think Insurance. I'll see you in the next one.